Dr. William L. Johnson III, and I'm so excited to share this message with you today. We've been looking forward to talking with you and continuing our discussion about how to make our lives better. It's important for me to remind us that these messages are meant to inspire and encourage us along the way. I hope that they do so for you, for your family, for your friends, and share them with those that you've come to know, and maybe someone who's going through a point in their life when they really need to hear these messages of encouragement and inspiration. You'll be able to share it with them, as I hope it will bless your life as well. Now to our morning meditation. Today's morning meditation is entitled Learning How to Swim. Learning How to Swim. I think it was the summer of 1977. Yes, I know I'm dating myself. When I first found myself in the Cleatown Breakthrough apartment swimming pool. There, as a young kid, I was invited by my cousin to go to the pool where she lived and to enjoy a day in the sun. The only caveat was, and the only problem was, I didn't know how to swim. And so we made our way to the swimming pool, and there, frightened as I was, I stood around the peripheries on the outside of the pool, and my cousin kept beckoning me to come onto the water. And I finally admitted to her that I didn't know how to swim. And she said, "That's okay. They have instructors that will help you learn how to swim. But first of all, there's some things you got to get used to. You have to get used to the water, get used to swimming, get used to having fun here, and let's start in the shallow end." And so we did. We flopped around, kicked our feet. We did all those things that kids love to do and others love to do when they go swimming. And she invited me to hold on to the edge as the water got deeper and to not let go, and so that I could get acquainted with swimming. Well, I've learned that there is a correlation, a relationship between learning how to swim and learning how to live. Really, swimming or doing anything that you don't know how to do or that is not familiar to you can be quite frightening. In fact, anything that you have found yourself doing, take a moment and imagine things that you've been afraid to try, things you've been afraid to do, or the first time you tried something that you've never done before. Maybe you stepped out and took a risk or tried to take a chance to do something that you've not done before. Maybe going back to school, maybe getting that degree, maybe perhaps having a child or getting married or falling in love or opening up your heart to something that is a passion for you. But whatever it is, it's kind of like learning how to swim for me for the first time. And there's some things that I learned from that. I looked it up and like, well, how do you learn how to swim? And I think there's some things I want to leave with you that might be important points for us to share. First of all, the first part of the swimming lesson was that it reminded me, if you're going to learn how to swim, you have to let go of your fear. That's pretty much easy, but the most difficult thing that you ever have to do, because the panic sets in. Like, what if I get out here and I drown? What if I try it and fail? What if I reach out and no one reaches out to me on the other side? What if I extend the kindness and no one does that? What if I go for my goals or my dreams and they crumble right before my eyes, or they move through my fingers like sand? What does that mean for me? Does that mean I'm a failure? Does it mean that I can never accomplish anything? In other words, swimming is one of those things that reminds us that you'll never do it well if you do it scared and afraid. And you have to let go of your fear. In other words, what I'm saying is, it's your life. You'll never live your life the way it should be lived if you keep living it afraid and in fear. I mean, there's some things we do that we have to do, that we have to stretch out and break through the barrier of fear. But if you're doing something like swimming, if you're afraid, it will take over your entire being. And so I want to remind us, and I want to encourage you to let go of your fear. First of all, If you're going to do it, if you're going to swim in life, if you're going to make it in life, if you're going to make it in love, if you're going to make it in your career, if you're going to make it and just be a friend, if you're going to make it in any circle, you have to let go of your fear. Now, mind you, there's a lot to be afraid of. There are threats everywhere. There are people always talking. There are circumstances that will always lead you to a place where you might find yourself in the quicksand of life. But we know those things are there. But the alternative is to not live at all. And I'm encouraging you that this is the one life you're given. You might as well live it with everything you have. Does that mean taking unnecessary risk? No. Does it mean you're going to do something dangerous like jump out of a plane or ride on your motorcycle at 150 miles an hour? No. What I am saying is, why not take the risk of having a conversation with someone you've never talked to before? Why not take the risk of letting your dreams now be put into action and trying them at least so that you'll know that you have given it a try? In other words, what I'm really saying is you have to learn how to swim like you have to learn how to live, and you have to be able to let go of your fear. The second thing I think was important is that you have to get used to floating. I didn't know what that meant, but then I really do. I'm always trying to find these ways to make this make sense for our lives. In other words, if you're going to learn how to swim, you have to get used to floating, to allowing the water to carry you, to allowing life to carry you, that you don't have to control everything. You don't have to have your hands on everything to make it happen. I know in the Western culture from which we live, it is one of those things by lifting yourself up by your own bootstraps, doing it on your own, rugged determinism, all those things that make you superhuman. But I want to remind you that none of us are that. We all live floating on the water of the sacrifices and the ingenuity and the support of others in our communities, and yes, those in our lives and in our families. So learning how to float means that you allow yourself to get used to floating. Learning how to swim is allowing yourself to get used to floating. There'll be some moments in which you will not be able to put a stroke in. There'll be some moments in which you will not be able to lend a hand and make it happen. There'll be moments in life when you just have to let life be and let life carry you where it wants to lead you. I may have told you this story somewhat before, but I had an incident where I almost drowned. And while there in the water, I looked up in the sky while being in the middle of a lake, and I determined that I had to relax and not try to fight what it is to survive. Had to allow the water to lift me up. Now, I've known how to swim, but I was there with family trying to rescue everyone, and in the middle of a big lake, we needed help. And in that moment, I looked to the sky and saw two birds over my head flying gracefully. And I concentrated on that rather on the panic or the worry about what I was going to do next. And before I knew it, the wind blew all of us further in to the marsh so that we could be rescued. It's important to know how and learn how to float. When you're exhausted, when you don't have the energy, when you don't have the fight, when you've been hit below the belt, when you've been betrayed by a friend, when you've lost a loved one, when you've gotten sick on your own, when you found yourself without the resources to do what it is you would want to do, and you're waiting on the next paycheck or the next thing to happen in order to get you where you're going. All of us have ups and downs in life. It happens to us all. And when you learn how to float, you trust by faith that the Creator who brought you here knows where you are and knows how to take care of you. And when you learn how to do that, you learn how to swim, and then you allow yourself to get used to floating. Floating is a thing that is amazing to me. I wish I had time to get to the science of it. The beauty of it is there's enough oxygen in you, enough air in you that is now propels you like a life raft if you allow it to float to the surface of any water. There's enough God in you There's enough grace in you. There's enough happiness and enough joy in you that allows for you to get used to floating. And depending on the fact that there's more in you, that you don't have to work at it all the time, but you can now rest and find yourself still at peace and safe at the surface of the water. Great thing to know. Let me hurry up. Here, learning how to swim has taught us some lessons, some life lessons. Learning how to swim is like learning how to live. You have to first let go of your fear, and then you have to get used to floating. But the last one, I think, is the most important. This message is clear. Don't panic. Don't panic. We have a tendency when a problem comes to really get activated on trying to solve it. And there's nothing wrong with that feeling. It is called adrenaline. It gets us going and gets us ready to deal with the problems at hand. But I want to remind you something I read some time ago. Remember that everything is just one thing. I read it from the book in a book called The Alchemist. Everything is only just one thing. It is not everything, and it need not be everything. So that if there's a problem, no matter how difficult it is, it does not have to take all of the air out of the room. It does not have to loom larger than the sun or the moon. It does not have to be your everything and eclipse everything in your life. Just because you're going through a rough time now does not mean all your life has been a bad life. Just because you have a rough patch in your marriage or a rough marriage does not mean that in the midst of your life that everything has been a failure. In other words, don't make things bigger than they ought to be. Don't panic. Take your time, take a deep breath, and allow for life to move you to the place. And here's what I do whenever I feel the anxiety rushing up when a problem or a challenge or a crisis arises. I have learned how to slow down, take my time, breathe in and breathe out, and focus on the moment that I'm in. What I've discovered is that in those moments in which I slow down, the world slows down and I can see better and clearer about what decisions that I need to make. In other words, whenever things get really rough, just like swimming, if you find yourself in the deep end and you realize you're surrounded by water that is taller than you and more than you can take into your body, then before you panic and fight the water, you have to slow down and not panic, because the panic will surely help you drown. You'll exhaust yourself and you'll find yourself in despair. Life can be that way. When trouble comes, sometimes we find ourselves trying to fight against it. And we learn that it is that time of finding peace in the midst of it. Reminds us of two things. One, that you'll get through it. And how do you know that? Two, because you can look back at other challenges that you faced that prove to you that, hey, you made it through that. I've learned that you have the ability to do that because you learned how, you got used to floating, and you put yourself in a position to let go of your fear. So panic need not be the order of the day. Well, learning how to swim, part one. I may do another part two to this because I think it's great. Learning how to swim is like learning how to live. And I want to encourage you to live your life. This is the only life you're given, the one life you're given. There's not going to be another you in the world. There's no one like you. You are unique in your own way, and you have something to offer to this world, despite what other people say or what you feel about what other people think. It is important to you, to me, that you know that you have value because you're loved, you're appreciated, and you're irreplaceable. Have a great day. Have a great week. Have a great life. Live it. And yep, as this message says, learn how to swim. Have a great one. Take care.